Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Spark and Celebrating Innovation at MaineHealth. Thank you for joining us for this fun, quick-moving celebration. This is our first celebration since MaineHealth Innovation was launched in 2020. I'm Susan Ahern, Vice President of Innovation at MaineHealth, and I'd also like to give a lot of credit to upfront to my amazing colleagues, Todd Keeler, Savannah Young, Elena Brondolo, and Kim Harvey, who really are instrumental in launching and building MaineHealth Innovation over the last 2 years. So what do? We've been leveraging the insights and ideas of our care team members, and we're fostering the culture of innovation across MaineHealth. We are here today to celebrate our passionate MaineHealth care team members who really are the courageous ones, right? And taking the steps to bring to life their novel solutions to some of our unmet care needs. First, we'll hear from some of our leaders, Dr. Andy Muller, CEO of MaineHealth, Dr. Doug Sawyer, Chief Academic Officer and Interim Chief Medical Officer, to talk about the impact of innovation on healthcare today and in the future. And then we'll move into the panel discussions with our innovators. We'll also hear from some of our amazing colleagues at the local health systems on their innovations. Jeff Sanders, the president of Maine Medical Center, will help wrap it up. On the logistics side, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to respond to them. So this is going to be a fast, fun-moving 90-minute celebration. And so now I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Andy Muller, CEO of MaineHealth. Andy, thanks really for joining us today, and I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, hey, thank you, Susan. It's so exciting to be with all of you this afternoon. And one of the things I don't think we necessarily do enough of is celebrate. And there really is so much to celebrate today. And, you know, it has been fun to be here for the past year and watch what is relatively a new part of our organization just really blossom before my eyes. And in some ways, I'm not terribly surprised. It's clear in moving to Maine and living here that there really is a spirit of innovation. I can't figure out how they get the road so clear after a snowstorm. That's still mind-boggling to me. And so if nothing else, that convinces me that we've got innovative people in the states of Maine and New Hampshire. So I'm so excited to be part of this. You know, I really want us to live our vision of working together so our communities are the healthiest in America. I'm hoping that's not the first time you've heard me say that, because I say it a lot. And it's really true. I think it's so critical that we are really thinking about how we can create the greatest impact for our communities. And given the circumstances we find ourselves in, on the tail end of a pandemic, with huge financial pressures, with the need to really rethink our business and how we deliver care, there's no way we can achieve our vision without continuously living our value of innovation. And that's part of the reason I'm so excited for what the Innovation Center is able to really accomplish. But in addition to the Innovation Center, I'm also just so excited about all of you and want to thank all of you who are part of our care team, all that you do to help us deliver care to our communities every day, and especially for innovators this afternoon who are going to be talking about some of the incredible work that they're doing. Susan was giving me a little bit of a preview, and it's really just so exciting and cool to hear about your stories, think about how you're really impacting the communities we serve, and really sparking a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around our ability to really touch our patients. So thank you all. And with that, I'd love to bring in our interim Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Doug Sawyer.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks, Susan and all, for having me here today. I failed the background test. I was supposed to make this look white behind me, and I failed, sorry. But that's part of innovation, right? Is that we don't always succeed, yet we keep trying. I remember when we started we conceived the Innovation Center, and Jeff asked me to help identify the first VP of innovation here. And we had a great round of people interested in joining us. And we were really fortunate to find Susan, who was right here in New England with us. The interesting thing was we did the interviews right before the pandemic, I think we were wrapping up the interviews as COVID was showing up in the news in China. And then the pandemic hits MaineHealth, and Susan has agreed to take on the job. And Susan, correct me if I get any of these dates wrong, but I'm pretty sure that we had you starting on April 1st. And we said, well, wait a second, we need you now, because we need to innovate our way towards being able to handle the problems that we're facing on supply side and the pandemic, et cetera. And I can't remember if we paid you or not, but we got you to start early, and you're willing and able to jump right in and help us start thinking about how to do things differently. So it's been great to see Susan build the innovation team. It's a phenomenal team of people that somehow, I don't know what the personality test is you use, but you find people that are able to bring out the child in each of us. And reminds me of one of my favorite books that Susan knows is Harold and the Purple Crayon. It's a great innovation story for kids where he has to innovate his way out of traps that he builds as he draws as a new world during his dreams. I encourage you all to go get a copy. If you don't have a copy, Harold and the Purple Crayon, 1956, I think is first publication date. Still relevant today. So it's really exciting to be part of what you've been building and the innovation culture. One of our candidates for the job that we didn't hire described innovation as the connective tissue between research, education, and care. And we've just adopted that saying. And I love that. It really is wonderful to see how the Innovation Center has been able to bring out the curiosity in so many people of our 22,000 care team members, getting them to think differently, ask the right questions, and try to do things in a different way to get a better result for the patients in our health in our community. I've been a physician science my whole career, and that means I'm used to failing, because you always have to start out an experiment willing to accept the null hypothesis. You always have to start an innovation willing to accept that it might not succeed. And this is all part of the culture that the team's been building. It's really been great to see how it's fed into our journey too as a learning health system. And we look forward to further growth and development through the great work that this team is doing. So I'm excited to be able to be here and celebrate with you all today in the wonderful work of the MaineHealth Innovation Center.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doug. And thank you for your leadership, Andy and Doug. So we have some familiar and new faces here today, and some of you might be asking, what is innovation and how do we do it? And so through connections, educations, and funding, MaineHealth Innovation is really helping our care team members address unmet care needs in order to transform care. And so we are pleased to share a brief video that we've created in collaborations with our colleagues at MaineHealth Education Services, who are also supporting this celebration. They're amazing. And so this video helps explain how MaineHealth Innovation is fostering the culture of innovation. So let's take a look.
MaineHealth represents the largest network of expert providers, researchers, and administrative leaders north of Boston, serving 1.1 million patients and employing 22,000 people across Maine and Carroll County, New Hampshire. Formed in 2020, MaineHealth Innovation is leveraging the insights and ideas of our care team members and fostering a culture of innovation across the MaineHealth system. We accomplish this by educating people to think differently, connecting the right people at the right time, and funding the innovative ideas that create a spark. We define innovation as a novel or innovative solution to an unmet care need. This could be a product like a redesigned patient gown that provides dignity and security, a service like using artificial intelligence to provide diabetic retinopathy screenings to our rural communities as part of routine visits, or a care team model like a unique surgical coverage model shared between two MaineHealth hospitals. MaineHealth Innovation connects courageous innovators to people who can help create novel solutions to unmet care needs. Our network of entrepreneurs, business experts, and strategic partners support our innovators as they develop and test early ideas. Through innovation, we are transforming care and fulfilling the MaineHealth vision of working together so our communities are the healthiest in America. Innovation starts with thinking differently, asking the right questions, and stepping outside of your comfort zone. Anyone with an innovative idea can engage with MaineHealth Innovation. Let's transform care together.
Yeah, thanks to colleagues at MaineHealth Educational Service. Great illustration. So thank you. So now we will hear from some of our amazing MaineHealth innovators. Again, they had a simple idea, a spark, and who have brought their ideas to life with hard work and support from our team. This group of innovators is poised to really impact patient care across MaineHealth and the healthcare industry. And so to help learn about their journey, we've brought along some of our valued partners. We have Chris Wolfel, who is the Director of Entrepreneurship at the Rue Institute and the Managing Director of Northeastern Center for Entrepreneurship. Chris has been involved with a number of early stage startups, incubators, accelerators. He's also a co-founder of 2 software companies. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Susan, and welcome everyone. This is an incredible event, and it's been great to watch the MaineHealth Innovation team grow and innovate constantly since I first met you all about 18 months ago. First, we'd like to start with some introductions of some of these innovators. Sarah Cox is a neuroscience patient navigator at Maine Medical Center who redesigned a hospital gown to prevent neurocompromised patients from pulling at their lines and tubes, provides dignity and comfort to all. Michael Ferguson is a pediatric intensivist at the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital at Maine Medical Center, and he's the chair of pediatrics. Mary Ottolini developed a simulation training activity to improve neonatal birthing outcomes in rural communities using augmented reality. Samir Haider is an emergency physician at Maine Medical Center who created Navigator, an app that allows patients visiting the emergency room in real time to get updates on their visits, diagnoses, and treatments. Brian Nolan is an internal medicine physician at Western MaineHealth who brought an artificial intelligence screening service to his practice to help detect diabetic retinopathy in his rural community. That's my quick version, but I'm now going to turn it over. Sarah, can you share a little bit more about your innovation?
Happy to. Can you hear me okay? Great. So many of you are likely familiar with a traditional hospital gown, like the ones we have at Maine Medical Center. One piece of cloth with 2 ties in the back. And studies have shown that this creates feelings of powerlessness and vulnerability that affects not only patient experience, but their outcomes as well. I had the original idea to redesign a traditional hospital gown in 2018, and then in 2020 started working with the Innovation Center at Maine Medical Center to develop a physical prototype. The design has evolved along the way with a lot of feedback from caregivers and patients themselves. I've just concluded a pilot with the population of neuroscience patients that I often work with at Maine Medical Center. As you can see from the pictures shared, the gown is more of a jumper style with snaps down the side and between the legs. It's more like a piece of clothing and provides more coverage and comfort for patients than the draped blanket style that we currently use. Standard Textile, who's the linen supplier for 98% of MaineHealth linens, has been an incredible partner. And with their help, we are close to finalizing a prototype. The next steps are to work toward trialing on other units and locations across MaineHealth and beyond.
Thanks, Sarah. Really incredible stuff. Michael, I'm going to pass it over to you now to share a little bit more about what you're working on.
Thanks, Chris. Your baby's neurological outcomes shouldn't be dictated by your zip code. 1% of births need intensive resuscitation. But if a hospital has only 1 to 2 births per day, it means that there's only about 4 resuscitations a year. This lack of practice is likely a major contributor to the fact that babies born in rural hospitals of Maine face a 6-fold increase in permanent neurological injuries. Studies have shown that simulation improves resuscitation outcomes through deliberate practice, but the startup cost of a simulation lab is approximately $250,000, which is out of reach of most of our rural hospitals. So we embarked on a plan to create a cheaper, portable, and novel way to bring simulation to these hard-to-reach areas. Augmented reality allows the opportunity for us to use cheap mannequin with a sophisticated holographic overlay and run a high-fidelity simulation anywhere in the world, and most importantly, in the same place that the real resuscitations will take place. Through the Innovation Center and Ignite grant, and in partnering with Case Western Reserve University, we've created the prototype neonatal augmented reality simulator, which we're currently trialing with our own NICU simulation team. We envision that within a year, we'll be able to offer this simulation experience to rural hospitals in Maine and indeed the rest of the world at a fraction of the cost of standard high-fidelity mannequin simulation.
Thanks, Michael. As someone who spent a few nights in Maine Medical Center earlier in January with my wife giving birth, it's great to see you continuing to innovate in ways to support this incredible work you all do. I'm going to turn over to Samir now to share a little bit about what he's working on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. For those of you who have been to an emergency department, you likely understand the problem that I reached out and put together a team to fix. So as the director of quality for our emergency department, I realized that our patient experience scores were subpar, and working for years trying to improve them, I realized that the real issue is that people don't know what's happening. You can come to the emergency department and wait in the waiting room for hours. You can be taken to a room and have a curtain closed and wait there for hours. And during that period of time, you think nothing's happening. Whereas the physicians are running around doing all sorts of things, not only for you, but for other patients, but they're still engaged in the care that they're delivering to you. So when about 5 years ago, I had visited a restaurant, and the hostess asked me if I wanted to download an app so I could do my place in line. And that was the moment where I was like, oh my God, why don't I have that in the emergency department? I want patients to know what's happening in real time. And so that simple idea turned into a mobile platform that's patient facing, that links with the medical record, integrates with Epic. And anytime I put an order into Epic, it links to a database and links that information to educational content that we've developed to educate patients. It's not just about education, it's about patient engagement and activating patients in their healthcare. So while they're waiting the 8 hours they spend in our emergency department, they know when I'm doing things. They know who their provider is. It's kind of a virtual whiteboard. It tells them how long things are going to take and what to expect. And a lot of the content was built by medical students and residents. So if I order a blood test like a CBC, there's a 30-second video that launches and teaches the patient about what a CBC is. So it really tries to engage them throughout their visit. It also asks them real-time questions about their patient experience. So we know in real time when a patient is having a bad experience rather than days later when they may or may not fill out their survey. So this has been a 5-year project. We've completed 2 pilots at Maine Medical Center. It's now fully integrated into the medical record. The last advance we just made was actually bringing in the consent forms to the application. So they can now consent to use the application right in the app, rather than having to fill out paperwork and do it in paper. And so you can also bring all sorts of other consent forms into the application to help with the intake process as well. So that's where we are. We are fully integrated now. It's live at Maine Medical Center. We hope to spread it throughout MaineHealth and scale, beyond that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Samir. Last but not least, Brian.
Thank you, and thanks to Susan and her team for supporting this project and all of your projects. Those are very impressive. So my idea was really, we've been reading about artificial intelligence and how it's going to either take over medicine or at least help us do our jobs better, more efficiently, really maybe take some of the busy work away. So I was very eager to find an application that we could apply in primary care and find an application that would help us solve a problem of access to care and improve screening rates for diabetic retinopathy in particular. AI software for imaging has been advanced and is actually now approved for use clinically. And so the timing was right and the grant became available. And so we rolled out this project to screen our patients right in our primary care clinic with the camera you see there. Does not require dilation of the pupil, so it's very swift and seamless in terms of procedure. And then 1 to 3 seconds for image interpretation. This improves access and cost of care and gives us a chance to make timely referrals for people with vision-threatening retinopathy to specialty care. Diabetic retinopathy is the leading cause of preventable blindness. So again, we're seeing improvement in our screening rates already, and it is a scalable technology. So we'll see how it goes.
Thanks, everyone. I learned an incredible amount in about a minute from each of you, and we're going to now go through a rapid fire question for each of you, and then a question that I'm going to ask you all to share. So first, I'm going to go to you, Sarah. What sparked this idea and innovation? What was the starting point?
So one particular patient, similar to Samir, I have a very clear memory of this. There was one particular patient who sparked this idea and gave me my kind of aha moment. At daily rounds on the unit where I work at my medical center with neuroscience patients, staff had been discussing a particular patient who was having a difficult time discharging to the next appropriate level of care, which was rehab, because he was confused from his brain injury and continually trying to grab at necessary lines and tubes that he had. He was having to wear mitts on his hands, which would prevent him from grabbing at medical equipment, but the rehab facility where he was ready to be discharged to cannot accept patients who are still requiring mitts for safety reasons. And as staff was talking about ways to try to get him to be more settled and not pull at his lines, I had the idea that if he was wearing something that was not just a gown that easily pulled away, basically a piece of cloth, giving more access, but more like something that snapped between his legs and could keep him more safe and more comfortable, that might help. So this moment helped me form the idea that a simple solution, such as what he's actually wearing, might help him discharge to the appropriate level of care and therefore make his bed available for another patient who may need it. And this really lit the fire in me to see what I might be able to come up with.
It's amazing. And I'm sure many people on the call today have those one or two patients they see with specific things that spark these new ideas. And Susan and Elena and the rest of the MaineHealth innovation team's there to help you take these to market and us at the Rootsuit as well. Michael, I'm going to turn to you. How has this project changed the way that you feel you individually can impact healthcare?
I think, like many of the people on this call, working in healthcare, you continually see little gaps that are just in products or in, I constantly use the term jerry rig, which I hopefully isn't a non-PC term anymore, that we're constantly jerry rigging things together in the ICU. Like this piece doesn't match with this piece, doesn't match with this piece. So let's tape this, hang this out here. And I'm seeing Samir nod because the ER and the ICU are very similar like that. We'll just piece things together. But what it's sort of led me to believe is instead of just saying, oh, someone should invent this little piece that goes there. Well, why not? Why isn't it one of us? Like just because we're in Maine or I'm just one guy in an ICU doesn't mean that it can't be our idea that then leads to that connector that everyone's been saying for years, maybe decades. Oh, why isn't there a connector that connects these things together? So I think what it's done is it's allowed me to realize that instead of just saying someone should do this, it's could I do this? Is this something that I could do? Is this something is this a gap that I could do? And I think that's been the best part about all of this.
I think that's incredibly well said. Why not you, and why not whoever else has that idea? It's all about moving forward and executing on it. Samir, on your end, what's been the most unexpected moment in this innovation journey? In the ER, you have unexpected moments every day, but this is a different world.
Yeah, I'd say, reflecting back on emergency medicine, I'm pretty hard to surprise. But there's been plenty of unexpected moments with rolling out my first innovation, my first invention. When I first came up with the idea, I tried for a while to get some traction, speaking with Epic leaders, but at that point, there wasn't such a thing as MyChart, and we had just gotten Epic. So we were pretty early in this process. And it got to the point where 2 years went by and I just put it in my back pocket and went about my business. And there was a moment where I met my our co-founder, who really helped develop this technology from a digital standpoint, which was a big surprise to me. So what happened was I was post overnight and I got an email from this gentleman who was part of an innovation network, and he had started a company. He was an entrepreneur and he wanted some help developing his digital application that helped with chronic heart failure management as an outpatient. So he developed this company that focuses on mobile applications for home health issues. And I heard him out. He was asking for some help on risk stratification for cardiac disease. And I was half asleep. And at the end of it, I was like, hey, that's great. I'll help you, but I have a better idea. And I let out my idea. And he was like, there's no way this doesn't exist, Samir. And I was like, no, it doesn't. And so he's like, all right. He's like, this is a great idea. And he taught me what an NDA was. He's like, sign this so you don't think I'm going to steal your idea, and I'll get back with you and do some research on it. And like 45 minutes later, he's like, this doesn't exist. We're going to do it. And within a couple weeks, I had the app on my phone. I had an LLC. I had trademark and patents being filed. I mean, that was an unexpected process for me. And I'm going to take that to the next level, which is where I am now. Is this thing is fully integrated and working. And the unexpected portion for me now is how hard it is to get it to the next level. I have this thing, it works, it improves net promoter scores, and I'm not a salesperson. And there's a lot that goes into commercialization and scaling that I never knew about. And so I'm grateful to have the innovation group here to help guide me through this. But as a physician, I just want to be a physician and invent cool stuff. Getting it to the next level, I need a lot of help with.
Awesome. And now we're going to turn over to you, Brian. How has your project impacted MaineHealth patients or care team members?
So I can speak locally in Western Maine, our primary care practice. So in the first year, we were able to screen about 200 patients, which I think we had over 500 not being screened in the practice. So a little bit of a slow start. There were a few hiccups along the way, but we did survey the first 100 patients, and we also surveyed all of our providers after initiation of this project. And one of the big themes was access to care. Providers and patients in particular were appreciative of the chance to be screened. Many weren't aware of the importance of retinopathy screening. Many were impressed by the convenience of the service. And most importantly, with our positive screens, and particularly, we had 8 or 10 vision threatening retinopathy detected. Those people were promptly referred, and in some cases required treatment or closer monitoring with the eye care professional. And in some of those cases, people took their disease more seriously and impacted their self-management, medication compliance, behavioral aspects of their care, and improved their A1Cs, for instance. And so I think that's a real impact that we've seen. And as this has evolved, I think the providers have been appreciative of the workflow aspects in terms of convenience as well. So
amazing. I'm going to ask one question now to everyone, and I'm going to even ask you to do it as in even under a minute if you can, to keep us on track here. What is one thing you would tell the other care team members and members of the community that are listening right now as they're trying to take their innovative idea to the next level? And I'll start with Sarah. We'll go in the same order: Sarah, and then Michael, then Samir, and then Brian. So you guys can just go rapid fire right along.
Great. So I think that when I share this project to other people in healthcare in any role, they'll say, well, I had an idea and there's no way I have time to do that, which is completely understandable. It's how we all feel. So I think what I would say is that, like any project that you might do, it's going to be a series of small triumphs and failures. It's not like a heavy lift one day and then none the next. And it can be really overwhelming and feel impossible with the day-to-day demands of our jobs and healthcare and everything, the toll that takes. But in my experience, and the way that it's worked well with the Innovation Center is to do one small thing daily. So if I even just decide that at least once a day, I will at least think about the project for a few minutes in the car, brainstorm a little bit, and just have it on rotation daily, just a little bit, or just send a thank you to someone that was helpful. It's the small steps in that way that tend to accumulate over time. And it feels manageable. And with the help from the Innovation Center at the end, there's a deliverable. So that's what I would say, is to at least step one foot in and see that there's help, and then daily do a little bit. And that's how it will get done.
I'll jump straight. Yeah, Chris, you want me to jump straight in? Yeah. So I agree with Sarah. I think the one thing I learned is that when you have something that is novel or innovative, you can expect there to be those who agree with you, but there's also the naysayers. And I think it's important that if you think this is a good idea and you really, really think it's a good idea, keep pushing. So 2 years ago, when I sort of semi-pitched this idea to who is one of the leaders in virtual reality simulation, he told me it's not possible. The technology is not there. And so I was really disheartened by that. And then fast forward to January of this year, where I was at a meeting and they were describing how what we're trying to design is the holy grail of the next wave of simulation. So we're on the forefront here of something that 2 years ago I was told from an expert is impossible. And so just keep pushing. Find that person who's going to keep you pushing and is going to hook you up, because you're going to get a lot of people saying it's not possible. But if you think it's a good idea, more than good odds, someone else thinks it's a good idea too.
I guess I would say, in line with what Dr. Ferguson mentioned, it's not easy. If you believe in it, don't give up. And there's people out there that can help you. I think I've learned that many times over with this innovation.
Yeah, and I would just add, build a team. Don't feel like you have to do it on your own. I think you're right. I agree with the earlier points, especially not giving up. There will be barriers, but get other people involved and excited, from the Innovation Center on down to your local clinic members. Our MAs in the practice, once they took ownership of this project, it really took off and the patients started getting screened. So build a team that's enthusiastic and supports the idea. Don't do it on your own.
Amazing. Thank you all for sharing all of your incredible work. And I've seen a lot of ideas and concepts over the last 10 or 15 years, and passion for a problem and expertise in an area surrounded with the right supports, mentoring, coaching, funding, and all of the pieces that Susan and the rest of the MaineHealth innovation team are doing can drive these, like many of you said, from concept to reality. And they have a huge potential to impact the future of healthcare. And now that's going to wrap up my section in this group, and I'm going to turn it over to Brandy Brown. Brandy's a social worker and senior program manager at the Gender Clinic at MaineHealth. She's worked within different systems of care and diverse populations as an advocate for improving LGBTQ healthcare. She's currently an innovation clinical coach with the MaineHealth innovation team. Brandy's going to introduce our next guest and innovation project. So Brandy, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I apologize. I did the opposite of Doug. I got the screen up just now, seeing that it's backwards, but there we are with the creative spirit. So the spirit of innovation really does extend across our whole system. So from, Damascotta all the way to North Conway, New Hampshire. So it's a pleasure to next introduce Will Owen, who's the manager of clinical education and emergency management at Memorial Hospital in North Conway. So Will's going to share a bit about Memorial's innovation journey.
Thanks, Brandy. Can everyone hear me all right? Great. So we faced a problem that many people are facing these days, which is rural workforce issues. And I say rural, but I think we all are facing them. And we noticed in 2021, we had a large gap in our MAs and having a hard time recruiting MAs. Whether that was our location, expanding practice, all of the above. Also, the local community college was having a hard time producing enough, having a hard time getting people to enroll and so forth. So we saw it as an opportunity to work with them to not only increase enrollment, but also to increase the quality of the education. And so we partnered with White Mountain Community College and basically created a win-win collaboration with them, which was an employee-based MA apprenticeship program. And I know others have done this, but what was great and fun about this is what we did was we hired them on. They were FT'd with full-time benefits for us. And we can go to the next slide. And one more. Thanks. And so we employee-based, so they were hired on with benefits. We covered their tuition, books, supplies were paid for by Memorial. It was a 9-month program, so we did condense it a little bit. And they went to class 2 days a week, and they came and saw us 2 days a week. At the end of the time, they were able to apply for open positions. And within MaineHealth, I'm happy to say that they all stayed with Memorial. But really what happened, and then we'll go to the next slide, is we invested folks and we had an opportunity. What happened is we had 36 applicants. We accepted 8 of them. We had ages from 8 to 57. We had 5 internal candidates and 3 external candidates who were accepted into it. And we invested in our team, and an investment is part of the definition and innovation we talked about. We also really tried hard to give them a unique and diverse experience. It was not just come and do your clinicals and check a box and do your hours. We had them in every setting, outpatient, inpatient. They got their white belts in QI. Almost every member of our senior team came and presented to them. They heard about initiatives going on at MaineHealth. And we really tried to bring them into the fold of the whole Memorial MaineHealth community mindset, and not just show them how to take a blood pressure. We also, during this, had the pleasure, I guess, is it don't let a good pandemic go to waste, of COVID. And we used them in the inpatient side. 2 years ago, I would never have said I would use an MA on an inpatient side, and they came in and acted as care extenders during surge periods. So we gave them a really well-rounded experience. They really bonded as a team. It's not an easy program, and the 8 of them really went through it together. One of them was not going to attend the graduation, and that was a disappointment. And they all got that person to join. They really bonded, and they not only bonded with each other, but with everyone, all the practices, and they got to know a lot of different people throughout the organization. We think we produced a much higher quality MA with this clinical experience and collaboration with the college. They're already all working. They're already all off orientation and on their own. They got college credits. They're allowed to sit for their certification. They all have full-time jobs with MaineHealth and Memorial right now. And out of all of this came a pretty unique opportunity where we've been asked to join a 3-year project from the National Center for Inquiry and Improvement called the Rural Pathways Project. And I will be sitting as a member on that, which is looking at rural completion rates and college, but also how to regional and rural economic development. So that's a pretty cool experience that I'm hoping that we will be able to continue and learn more. We are continuing to work with White Mountain Community Health, and we'll have a program this coming year and are taking applications as we speak.
I love the collaboration and just the influence that you're going to have here with this education. How did the community collaborators and partners help advance the work that you're doing here?
I think we all had something to offer in the sense that the college had the didactic education. We don't have a team to do that here, and as the time we had the clinical experience and the people who led it, the sort of creativity to think outside the box and say, let's go put them on med surge. And not only is that helping during COVID, but that's giving them an experience of when they take care of that patient in their primary care office after a post-discharge visit, they know what their patient went through. As someone who's worked in emergency departments, EMS, and a variety of different places, I just think you have to understand what happens in the other parts of the world. So we were giving them stuff, they were giving us. We talked a lot. We changed our curriculum. They changed their curriculum for us to help with COVID vaccines. So we increased their enrollment, they increased our workforce, and we continued to learn from each other. We continue to collaborate. We hope to do something similar with LPN programs or LNA programs, potentially LPN programs, as well as who knows what this opportunity sitting on this group for this project holds. But I think we fed off each other and really sparred each other to keep moving forward. As the earlier panel said, sometimes it's hard, but our counterparts there were pushing us, we were pushing them, and I think we will continue to refine and even get better with that collaboration.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Will. It's a great reminder that the innovation applies more to just medical products or treatments. And I think this is just a fantastic example of the innovation in education and workforce development. And it's just incredible to see MaineHealth at the forefront of this work. So I'm going to welcome our next panel. So this group is what I'll call the device group. They have thought of the innovative devices that aim to provide better care experiences to patients. They have a wonderful mutual connection to the University of Southern Maine, who's a strategic partner to MaineHealth Innovation and serves as its engineering arm. So please welcome Dr. Jeremy, I hope I have this right, Qualls. Jeremy is the Dean of the College of Science, Technology, and Health at the University of Southern Maine, USM. He also helps to oversee the Maker Innovation Studio, MIST Lab, which is an innovator's playground full of all sorts of 3D printers and design tools. Jeremy and his team of engineers are like the extended project team members of the MaineHealth Innovation Projects and have really served as a partner for this group in helping design or refine prototypes. So Jeremy, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Brandy. So I'm very excited and also honored to be here. I've seen the program grow and it's really amazing. The projects have great potential on the impact of the community and in the lives of probably secondary, third, tertiary down the line of individuals. I've worked with a number of our panelists. I've got 4 amazing panelists to introduce and then have a series of questions for each of them. So I want to start off and introduce a trauma nurse at Maine Medical Center, Will Connolly. He's created a portable suction device that can clear a patient's airway wherever they happen to be. Jeff Halter, he's a pediatric surgeon at Maine Medical Center. He has invented an implantable clip that can be inserted through the G-tube site at the time of tube removal in the office without anesthesia. And then, Obi, I hope I don't slaughter your name. I apologize ahead of time. Is that it? Obiezi? Wana Inze Wunwa? Close. Okay. Thank you very much. So he's a surgery resident at Maine Medical Center. He's created a point of care device that combines a visual inspection with machine learning. It allows a provider to test and treat cervical lesions in one gynecological visit. So, and my 4th panelist is Bethany Sweet. She's a certified child life specialist at the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital. She's created a 3D printed port, and it's used by certified child life specialists in medical play for procedural preparation, procedural support, and therapeutic play with pediatric patients admitted to the hospital or outpatient setting. So I'm going to start off with Will, and then each person goes down and tell a little bit about their innovation. So Will, can you tell us about your innovation?
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah. So what I've been working on within this lab is it's something I call the Rescue Vac. It's a disposable, personally carryable, portable suction device made for emergent airway clearance. What makes it a little bit different than any other product out there is it's meant to be a personal carry, so it's always on your person. You're ready for an airway emergency at any time.
Excellent. I love how mobile your device is.
Yeah, it's got a small profile. It's only 2 inches by 8 inches. Can fit in your pocket and it's ready in seconds. There's no setup. There's no charging. It's ready for use anytime you're exposed to an emergency.
Excellent. Very cool. Jeff.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Good.
Excellent. So I'm a pediatric surgeon and I take care of kids with G-tubes. I brought my own prop. This is a mannequin that I use when I'm talking to parents about putting in a feeding tube called a gastrostomy. It's a feeding tube that goes straight through the abdomen into the stomach. There's about 20 million patients worldwide that have these types of feeding tubes put in for medications or for nutrition. And when they're done with them, the standard of care currently is to just remove this button at the bedside, just deflating the balloon that holds it in and allow the site to close spontaneously. That works anywhere from 90 to 70% of the time, but up to 30% of the time that site doesn't close, kind of like a pierced earring. The site doesn't close. You can put an earring through it even if it hasn't had one in for years. So in the patients that don't close spontaneously, they require a surgical procedure to close that site surgically with anesthesia. So the proposed device, the image is there on the screen, is a clip that you can put through the site in the office at the time that you deflate the balloon and remove the gastrostomy button. Doesn't require any anesthesia, will take about 15 seconds to apply, and close the site from the inside so that it doesn't leak and require surgery in the future.
Very, very cool. Obi.
Hi everyone, my name is Obi. So what I'm working on is based on cervical cancer. So cervical cancer kills over 300,000 women every year. It's mainly a disease of rural, vulnerable, and underserved areas globally. According to the WHO, adopting the test and treat approach is pretty instrumental and is their #1 recommendation for preventing cervical cancer. Right now, there's a need for a cervical cancer device or screening technique that is cheap, accessible, quick, and easily linked to treatment. LadyScan is a low-cost handheld point-of-care device that can both test and treat cervical precancerous lesions in the same examination and has the benefit of not really requiring specialists. It leverages the machine learning in order to improve the diagnostic accuracy of visual inspection with acetic acid, and also has a treatment probe at the same time. We've been fortunate to partner with the USM Bioengineering device to help us build the machine learning algorithm and also to advance the existing prototype that we have.
Excellent. And our fourth panelist, Bethany.
Hi. Back in 2019, I had a patient who needed a porta catheter that really worked. Like, she wanted to see it, play with it, to play out medical traumas that she had experienced. And there's lots of things on the market right now that are able to kind of replicate that, but she wanted to flush it and de-access it and access it over and over and over again. So similar to what Michael Ferguson was talking about, I'm going to pull that MacGyver comment out of the thing. I MacGyvered, some version of a port, and then eventually ended up 3D printing it so that it was a little more sustainable. And with the success I had with this patient, with this port that I developed, I wanted to make it available for all child life specialists. So that's sort of where I came up with, that's sort of where my relationship with the Innovation Center started.
Thank you. So those are our panelists. Amazing innovations already started up, and so we're going a little bit further detail. I've got a question for each of the of our innovators. So I'll start off with Will. Will, what sparked your idea?
Yeah, it's actually again, a personal experience for me. I was working in the trauma room, and I was transporting a critically ill patient up to our SKU, which means a trip down through some elevators and some long hallways in the middle of the night. And my critically ill patient started to decompensate in the hallway. As soon as I got out of the elevator, I was by myself, and there was no way to kind of amount resources to respond to me in that kind of time. So I basically just ran with my patient. They had started to vomit on themselves and suffocate. And I just ran as fast as I could with the patient to get the SKU, where luckily I got there in time. But I was basically like, how can I not be in this situation again? There's other devices out there. They're big, they're heavy, they're cumbersome. As a trauma nurse, we have to really watch how much gear goes on our bed. And if we're not planning to use something, it doesn't usually make the trip. So I, like a lot of other people, MacGyvered the initial rescue vac out of some materials I had in my trauma room, something lightweight I could throw it on my bed for transports. Didn't take up any space. Hopefully I'd never use it, but it would be there in case you get in that kind of a situation, because there's really not a lot of resources or devices out there that can get you out of a tough spot like that.
Excellent. Jeff, second question is for you. How has this project changed the way you feel you can impact healthcare?
Yeah, so I think for me, it was recognizing that the standard of care isn't always what the standard of care should be. I work with many of the people that are on this panel. None of us realized, I think, initially that we were innovating, and it's very inspiring to see all of these people that I know and work around the hospital with that all have innovative ideas. But for me, just in terms of the standard of care, I saw lots of patients with these G tubes that I was removing and then crossing my fingers that they were going to be in the 70% that closed spontaneously rather than the 30% that were going to have that site leak for weeks and suffer with that problem and then have to ultimately have it closed surgically. And so just reinforcing that that the standard of care becomes a standard of care because it has superseded what used to be the standard of care. And all of us see these problems that we encounter all the time, and knowing that there's a better way to do it is what I take with me when I think about how I can make this problem anyway better.
Excellent. Obi, how has collaboration helped move your project forward?
Well, as most of you may know, I'm a surgery resident and we don't have time. Being a resident in general, you don't have time. So I think one aspect of is that it's really helped me offload some of the burden that I've had, because this project I've been doing for a few years, and it's been pretty slow up until the point I got to find partners that would help me with the machine learning component. Is an expertise that I do not have. And for me to actually have to go learn how to code and do the algorithm, it just would be impractical. So I think that's really helpful. Also, there are some elements of engineering and biodesign that, you know, as a physician, I do not have. And it's helpful to have someone who's an expert in that to just focus on that and give me ideas. And I can say, this makes sense for the clinical scenario, you know, and this doesn't. And also it's that extra group to bounce your ideas off of. And they've also been really helpful in terms of looking into the literature, see what's there in relation to what they're thinking of proposing. So I think the benefits would be, one, to offload some of the work, two, to leverage their expertise, and also to reduce the things that I have to do myself so I can focus on the clinical and the practical applications of the device.
Excellent. And so the next question, Bethany, what is the most unexpected moment in your innovation journey?
So definitely it has to be the partner with MaineHealth. And I apologize if you can hear my dogs. I definitely was afraid at first to share my innovation, just because I was afraid that the hospital was sort of going to take complete ownership of what I had created, and it was a complete opposite experience. Yeah, MaineHealth and the Innovation Center, they just sort of like embraced what I wanted. I've come up with lots of crazy ideas, and they've helped me to decide whether or not I should go through with it or not. And I've pushed back on some things, and they've helped guide me, you know? So I think it's the partnership that I've had it's just been the greatest experience so far.
Excellent. I do agree. It takes a large community. It takes a village to raise a product. All right, so now a question for everyone. We'll just go in the same order, just like the panel one did. We'll just go run the same order. So everyone, what's the one thing you would tell your fellow care team members looking to take their innovative ideas to the next level? And of course, we'll start with Will.
Great. Yeah, I think I'm echoing something that other people have said already, but I think be patient with the experience. You know, it's not, you know, to create something and to invent something's exciting, and with excitement is the feeling of things moving quickly. But I think it's being comfortable with the process. Sometimes you have to wait for things to fall into alignment. There's so many moving parts with, you know, getting this to the next step. So just stick with it and just keep doing the work. And you know, sometimes the best you can do is kind of be there passively, kind of engaging things, and then wait for those next steps when they kind of, you know, things come together again and you get some more momentum. But it's having the patience and the confidence that all those pieces will come together if you just kind of stick to it and be patient and hold on for all those parts to come together for you, and they will. But yeah, just be patient and it will all come together.
Yeah, for me, it's knowing how much expertise is here. Kind of echoing a little bit what Bethany said. I go to professional conferences. We all go to professional conferences to kind of see what the state of the art is for any of our particular disciplines. And there's lots of places that are producing innovations and presenting them at places like Stanford and Boston and New York. And then we ask ourselves, why not here? And so that's what I would kind of communicate to any of the people that are interested or have ideas, is that there is infrastructure here, there's expertise here. I didn't even realize it until it was brought to my attention. And so that's what I would say to anybody else that's got an innovative idea, that that there's expertise and infrastructure here to do it.
I don't know if I have one single idea, but I'll just summarize my experience as this. Just believe that you're the one. If you have a thought on an idea, don't think someone else smarter than you will figure it out. No, you were given that idea for a reason, and no one can dream your dream better than you. So just do it. And what I would add to that is hurry up and fail. Fail as quickly as you can, because failure tells you about things that don't work. If your final product or the first product you launch is perfect, then you waited too long. So just hurry up and fail. You'll be fine.
I would say definitely to trust the process, but also to ask lots of questions, be open to suggestions, and just try everything. MaineHealth is here to help us, not, I think we're in a unique situation where our hospital wants to help us instead of some other hospitals do want to take over people's innovations, and that's definitely not MaineHealth. Definitely trust it.
Excellent. So this is to close out this panel, and I'd like to thank all of our inventors here, our innovators. It's amazing what you're doing, and to keep up the work, your role models, and then also do a shameless plug for our lab. If anyone's interested in looking at expanding any kind of technical prototype, reach out and tap us. We'd love to help partner with you on any projects. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back, I believe, to Susan.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. You're an amazing partner. It's fantastic to have you here, so thank you. And how happy are folks here learning from our innovators, right? And meeting our partners. It's fantastic. So our third and final panel is all about the Moonshot idea. Both innovators are, again, at the forefront of their field. They're investigating and creating the new use of materials and technologies for their devices. But first, we'll hear from colleagues at Franklin Community Health Network, who are developing a really cool community paramedicine program. And Brandy, let's turn it back over to you.
Oh, Susan, it's a very inspiring day. I'm pleased to introduce Deb Birchfield, who's a nurse practitioner over at Franklin Memorial Hospital in Farmington, Maine.
So I'm going to get kicked off of the Innovation Survivor Island, I think, today, because I didn't get my screen up. But anyway, I'm here. So we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. So basically, we provide care in Franklin County, which is in the Western Mountains of Maine. Our project was providing care to our senior population at the very beginning of COVID, before we had vaccines, before we had any monoclonal antibodies, and it was to the senior community. And we already had an existing community paramedicine program, and it was how do we utilize that to manage these folks that were aging in place and honoring their goals of care. So basically our biggest population is age 55 to 64 in our area. We have the only emergency room in Franklin County. We operate the only emergency medical system or EMS North Star in Franklin County as well. The area that we service is twice the size of Rhode Island. And our project was to maintain patient-centered care for our aging population that were living in aggregate facilities at the onset of COVID. And how could we do that using some of the technology that we already had in place, as well as the community paramedicine program. And so we had a collaboration where we joined a partnership with Androscoggin Home Health and Hospice, as well as myself through Franklin Health Community Health Network, using technology from Androscoggin and North Star EMS. And so what we did is we created our partnership and collaboration to expand the already existing community paramedicine program to meet our pandemic needs locally. We have 6 local long-term care, assisted living, skilled senior population communities. And what we would do is when we had an outbreak in each one of those, I would take over as provider of the community, and then we would have the North Star EMS do our community paramedicine. I would monitor their vital signs on the technology provided by Androscoggin Home Health. And then if the patient's goals of care were to be comfort care, then we would enlist the hospice program with Androscoggin. Next slide. So the impact on the community this project was specifically about was a memory care facility that had 85 beds. We ended up doing 54 to 65 visits between that time using technology. We only had 3 deaths, and those folks had COVID-19 as well as underlying pre-existing conditions. And out of those, 2 were already on hospice at the onset of the pandemic. We had 3 emergency transports with worsening related symptoms, but 2 admissions, and 2 of those were related to the complications from COVID. We had no residents that were admitted to ICU or placed on ventilators, and 6 hospice admissions based on goals of care conversations with family. Next slide. What we were able to do is we were able to treat patients in place, honor their goals of care, lots of conversations with families, as well as shielding our emergency room from unnecessary visits that we could manage in place with algorithms that were developed through collaboration with MaineHealth Geriatrics, and using community paramedicine to help facilitate those face-to-face using technology, using Zoom, and using the data that we were able to collect with Androscoggin Home Health and Hospice.
Well, thank you. I heard a lot about the impact on the community. I'm interested in how did the folks in the community, or the community collaborators and partners, how did they help advance the work that you're doing?
So this program, we replicated it through different facilities and different avenues of care delivery, and it evolved into something where as soon as there was an outbreak, we started our huddles. The group just came together, and we were able to use the technology with the boots on the ground of the community paramedicine program, as well as the single provider managing these patients. So there's continuity of care. And then the patient's families got that communication of, this is what's going on. This is an update. We knew upfront what the goals of care were, so we could make sure that we honored those, as well as shielding the emergency room. So without having all of those pieces brought together, I couldn't have done it by myself, going into all the facilities. So it really took a collaboration.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Deb. Just a lot of innovative stuff happening in Farmington, and look forward to learning more. The next panel we have here is a mini panel featuring 2 MaineHealth innovators who are exploring the Moonshot ideas that Susan mentioned. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Rob Ecker, Chief of Neuroscience at Maine Medical Center, and Dr. Sunil Malhotra, cardiothoracic surgeon at Maine Medical Center. So Rob, why don't you start and give us a quick overview of your project?
So if you look at the top here, what we're working on right now is some technology that showed up actually about a decade ago with a University of Maine collaborator who had showed me a material that when you give it electric current moves. And I spend my life moving wires throughout the vascular system that has to be done carefully to be able to treat aneurysm, stroke, and any number of other vascular diseases. The reality is a lot of my work is also transferable. It's transferable to cardiology, it's transferable to anesthesiology, it's transferable to minimally invasive surgery. So the idea of creating wires and catheters that you can move with a joystick carefully and would add both efficiency and safety. So, 10 years ago, it's remarkable, this meeting today, I have to say, because when I began this journey a while ago, as we've been working through this work, there was no, you had to find the individual people. To see 90 people on this call today, and Susan having put together her terrific team, and Todd is really terrific. So we've been building towards this prototype with this material called IPMC as our first move. We have an image of actually being able to actually put a joystick controller on the table. And as we've advanced this, go to the next slide. We've progressed through multiple prototypes and with a number of, I will say I had not planned in my academic or in my professional life to get a patent, but I have to say through these offices now, I think we have 3. So it was a nice thing that has been a kind of remarkable, piece of my life now that I have to say every time I work on this gives me joy. I mean, it really is a remarkable thing. Next slide, please. This is actually a prototype of the IPMC at an 0.14 inch level, if we can play that movie. And this is actually the kind of wire we use. It's now upside down. I'm not sure why. But anyway, you'll get the idea. Either way, the wire moves in both directions. So here's an 0.14 robotic wire. And the most important thing you think about this is we go through the body, especially to the brain, you go through multiple curves. So by the time you get to where you actually have to affect the final turn to an aneurysm or the final turn to a clot, you have all of these other turns that you have to deal with. And dealing directly with this right now, I am independent of all those turns. I can turn wherever I want. I put in the next slide just because a true innovation. I think some of my colleagues who have spent time with me on this will understand this. We now have a joystick controller. And I'm going to tell you what this, I now have a university that are some French collaborators that have some new material that's very similar to this stuff, but actually much, much better in terms of its fidelity. And this to me was, I played with this literally last week with one of our collaborators down in Saco, Luma Incorporated, who's worked with a number of people on this call. And the guys at Luma, the guys from France sent me this material, and I literally played with this last week that we're sending to the manufacturer, and it's spectacular. So if we could play that movie. So if you think about a wire end and now I can move with that kind of control, that kind of fidelity, that kind of care, I mean, really remarkable. We have some huge engineering challenges to overcome. We don't have a product ready. To get something through to FDA approval is a multi-million-dollar process, so there's money to be raised. But it has been a remarkable evolution to date. I've learned a ton. I've learned a lot from everything about how you build a team to how you build a wire. So it has been very, very good.
It's just phenomenal. Thank you. Sunil, I'm going to share your moonshot in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. So, wow, Rod, that was really impressive. But basically, what I'm looking to develop is a pulsatile vascular graft. And this is sort of focused on a particular patient population that I deal with, and I deal with patients born with congenital heart disease. And the children that are born with a single functional ventricle actually occurs in about 1 in 500 births. And right now, our approach is called the Fontan operation, and it's life-saving in that before we were able to address this surgically, these patients unfortunately probably wouldn't make it past their second or third birthday. But we've been able to offer this operation for over the past 30 years, but at the same time, we're stuck with the same limitations that nothing's really progressed in 30 years. And it's basically a tube graft that functions as a non-pulsatile or right ventricle. So it's basically a passive tube that basically reverts these patients, not to make it too crude, but makes it like a salamander circulation. And so that's very inefficient. So it's a flawed solution. You have a lack of a pumping chamber. And so this really has inefficient physiology due to passive flow. You have hepatic congestion. You don't have good flow to the systemic ventricle. And what this ends up happening is that these patients both have limited life expectancy and quality of life limitations. You have significant liver dysfunction resulting in ascites and protein-losing enteropathy, which are really impactful from a quality of life situation, requiring multiple hospitalizations. And then eventually these patients require transplantation or end up with early demise, unfortunately. So, my thought was this is rife for innovation, because this is basically an engineering or biologic plumbing solution. We need to figure out a way to develop an answer for how to develop a pulsatile graft. And the solution really is that you need a graft that you can take off the shelf, that is biocompatible, but that can develop maybe 6 to 8 millimeters of mercury. And you could really impact these patients' lives. it's something that, obviously we have organ shortages. These patients that then present for transplantation have liver dysfunction, and they often need a liver transplant also. So if you could, at the onset, if you could overcome those issues by developing a graft that can have forward flow, that's really, it's a moonshot, but I think with the technology that we have, it really should be, it should be doable. And so, really there's no truer tagline than connective tissue with the Innovation Center, because, when Susan first approached me to be an innovation coach, I said, well, listen, I have this idea and I've been thinking about it for probably like 8 or 10 years. Maybe I could get the Innovation Center to help me, as well as me helping out the Innovation Center. And she said, go ahead and apply for the Ignite Fund. And I did that. And through that process, and again, I've only started this in January. Through that process, I've met a number of different collaborators, and we talked to people at MIT and at Brigham and Women's, and eventually, Jeremy and I started talking. We've been talking the whole time, but he came up with an idea, and we're moving forward with that. And I think we just filed for a provisional patent that we can get fluid to move forward in a glass tube. So it's definitely a moonshot. We're starting at the ground level. There's a lot of engineering challenges that need to be worked out, but I'm optimistic and I'm an optimist in general, but I'm optimistic that we'll find a way to make this a reality.
I've heard this your presentation a few times and read your papers, and I'm still trying to understand it, but I believe in it. So thank you. This being a moonshot panel here, should your moonshot innovation really land, if you could each share just how you see this disrupting the way that we deliver care right now. If you want to go first, Rob.
So I like the science fiction. I mean, this really is science fiction we're playing with here that I'm playing with now, which for me is part of the fun. If you really want to take it forward, if you think about what most people are doing now, why this is different generically, is the robots, or the so-called robots that we use now, are hand-assisted things for making surgeons sort of steadier, or maybe accessing some dark spaces with better light surgically. They're not really robots. They're not doing the work, right? They're not actually, even there are robots that assist humans now, and medicine isn't even that far right now. So this is actually using the tools of surgery and making the tools of surgery robotic. What's the next step? I'm not in the room. Sunil's not in the room, right? Wow. I actually get this working well. It doesn't matter where I am. I could be home, right? Like, I mean, so that's actually, if you want the science fiction of what you could do with something like this. And we're actually beginning our patents, and there's no reason anyone paid much attention to them, but our patents are actually on much more complex things. We actually had to go back and get a patent on the simpler thing I just showed you, because our initial patents are complex, but we had to start somewhere. The idea we could make a complex retriever that could pull out a foreign body, which is what the original patent was on. Like, I got to start somewhere to do that, right? So we've started with the idea of the wire. The wire itself, if you look at everything together, surgery, neurosurgery, it's a $3 billion market worldwide. So the wire market itself, and once we know we can make one wire of one size, I can make a wire of any size. So it is an opportunity to step into a space that's entrepreneurial. It steps into a space that has enough dollars in it that someone's willing to invest and take a risk. And everything we're doing is calculated risk. The people who are investing in us, you investing in us, is that calculated risk to try and advance things forward. And for me, that for us made the most sense to work on the wire. It's been we've had lots of challenges, but I have to say this new material and the group I'm working with to manufacture it in Minnesota, I think are very, very good. So I hope that progresses. But the real science fiction is I'm not in the room.
Oh, that's definitely a moonshot there. How about Sunil? How are you disrupting the way we do care?
Yeah, so I mean, look, the patient population that I'm looking at, it's tiny. It's a sliver of even, it's probably 1/5 of patients with congenital heart disease. But it's also looking at a problem that everyone is treated the same way for about 30 years. And it's an imperfect solution. We've got to do better for our patients. And, you know, other people have come up with ideas how to help a failing Fontan patient, a patient who's at the end of, you know, has had this circulation for maybe 10, 15 years and is starting to fail. So how do we help that circulation out? My approach is to do it from the beginning. Can we just grab a graft off the shelf that can provide forward flow? And then, you know, kind of alluding to what Rob says, that you have to start somewhere. Where I have to start at the most, you know, the use case, and then expand it. Can this be used in patients with sluggish flow, say peripheral vascular disease patients that need augmented flow, have high resistance vessels? You know, there's a tremendous, you know, could it help flow in other areas and in venous systems that are propagating clot or something like that? Certainly there are other applications that we can apply this to, but, you know, obviously I started a place where I saw the clinical problem, where I think there could be tremendous impact on quality of life and, you know, lifespan overall.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. I'm looking forward to seeing where these projects go. So I wish you the best of luck as you continue to shoot for the moon. Next up, we're going to hear from Matt Hanna, an internal medicine physician and Chief Medical Informatics Officer at Midcoast Parkview Health. And Matt is going to tell us about their innovative remote patient monitoring program.
Great, thanks. Tough to follow the moonshots, I must say. So back to the ground. Thanks for having me, Brandy. So next slide, please. So like everyone in this meeting, I've over my career really enjoyed leveraging technology to take care of my patients. And like it or not, a little over 2 years ago, those of us providing any ambulatory care at all were really sort of forced to do this with the rapid adoption of telehealth, not just in MaineHealth, but obviously across the country. But providing this myself, I rapidly recognized some interesting benefits. I was talking to patients in their own environment. They're sitting on their couch. I could see their cat in front of the screen. It was almost as if it was a hybrid between the in-office visit with the home visits of the old days. But we had missing elements. We were missing the blood pressure readings that we could trust. We were missing A1Cs in our diabetic patients, weights in patients with heart failure. Next slide, please. So we all reverted to telehealth. Telehealth, broadly defined, is just having a visit either over a video, preferably, or over a phone, if that's all they had. Whereas remote patient monitoring is actually the collection, acquisition of trusted clinical data that can then be transmitted, ideally, to the electronic records for a review at that time. Next slide, please. So we took the dilemma of not having the structured information available, along with the long-lasting blood pressure dilemma, as I've called it. We treat blood pressure, as we all know, based upon measurements in the office, perhaps the most stressful 12 by 12 space most of us hopefully will find ourselves in. And we're treating these readings that are artificially elevated, sending the patient home, and obviously that has some risks. At the same time, all of the quality metrics we have to submit are based upon in-office readings. Next slide, please. So I've always used the analogy that this is about as silly as trying to manage diabetes based upon blood sugar readings that we're getting at the ice cream parlor. It just doesn't make any sense. Next slide, please. So we paired up with Western Maine, Midcoast and Western Maine, with the two pilot sites supported by the ACO and MaineHealth Care at Home to really address these dilemmas of getting accurate measurements at home, addressing the clinical needs I've outlined. And we used the HRS vendor, which we saw that Franklin was using, I think, for their home health stuff. Next slide, please. So this is it. Basically, if we found a patient was eligible for this service, we would order the service and they would get shipped to their doorstep, a blood pressure monitor that Bluetooth communicated with an included tablet device. It educated them on high blood pressure. It told them how to take an accurate reading. And having one in my office, there's this awkward voice that barks at you once a day to do your blood pressure. And then at the end of the week, those readings are uploaded to our screen in Epic, and we can manage these patients remotely. Next slide, please. So where are we? So we've enrolled over 160 patients. I didn't have the data for today's presentation, but about 80% of the patients that got one of these devices participated. Anecdotally, they felt much more engaged with us. We were able to interact with them and really focus on the readings that they had submitted. Where are we going? Well, we all know that device technology, as we just heard, is advancing super rapidly. So we will not be beholden to one vendor or one device. We are delivering high quality care without them having to wait for the next appointment with me in 3 months. My favorite thing is we're rapid cycling this information. We're taking blood pressure readings, and once a week or once every 2 weeks, the longest, we can make adjustments. And often their blood pressure is at goal before the next appointment in my schedule. And I will say that there is what I like to call mindful deregulation underway, so that we are not going to be beholden to these high-tech devices to be able to count these measurements for our quality metrics and to be able to provide healthcare for our patients. That's all I got.
I love this. This is definitely going places as a pilot. So if you were going to give some advice to another hospital who wants to implement a remote patient monitoring program, what is your advice?
Well, my experience is, especially in primary care, we have a ton of data hitting our desktops every day. And so this is one more thing. And in some cases, if you do it really well, it's a lot more things. So I guess my advice, and really the next stage in this, is really protocolizing this so that this data is coming to a clinical RN or even a pharmacist. And based upon certain protocols, these medications can be titrated to goal with our oversight. And so I think the scalability has to be kept in mind, because once you unleash this and patients adopt it, you got a lot more data to manage without even seeing them. That's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you. We come back to Susan here to close us out, I think.
Yes, thank you, Brandy and Matt, and all of our innovators. These stories are simply fantastic and inspiring. There's so much to celebrate here, and I thank all of you. So to help us wrap up our time together, I'm pleased to welcome Jeff Sanders, who is the president of Maine Medical Center. Jeff helped launch MaineHealth Innovation with Doug Sawyer when it was just an idea. Thanks, Jeff, for your leadership, your vision, your support in bringing MaineHealth Innovation to life. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Susan. Can you hear me okay, Susan?
Yes.
Good. So Deb, I got the background messed up too. So at least I figured out the blur. Bravo. This is amazing. And I'm going to share I have to go back a little bit to close it out. What you all demonstrated here is, I think, an idea that came together many years ago. And I'm going to share a couple of just vignettes of how the idea came together. We did an accelerator program probably 6 summers ago. We partnered up with Unum in particular, brought companies here who had ideas and they wanted to partner with healthcare organizations in particular. And what we learned through that experience was the appetite to do innovation was great in MaineHealth. What we also learned was a lot of these companies who had worked with places like Kaiser out in Colorado had a lot better experience working here in Maine with our care teams than they did with some of the larger institutions they had worked with. So that set us on a journey. The other thing I would share is asking good questions is probably the first step of innovation. One of our colleagues who joined us probably 6 years ago had done her fellowship in cardiology at the University of Pennsylvania, ended up in my office at one point and said, Jeff, how do we do innovation here? I looked at her and I started talking about MMCRI, now the MaineHealth Research Institute. And it was Jen Monty. Some of you know Jen. And Jen's like, that's not what I'm talking about, Jeff. And I said, well, explain some more, Jen. And from that, some here have been involved, were involved. The ideas that came forward to develop this innovation center, I'm going to share just one concept, and it's this idea of flexibility. How do we create a place for people to bring ideas forward? The very complex ideas, the Moonshot that Sunil and Rob talked about, the one that we just heard about in primary care, which probably has a broader application than anything we heard about, and to do it fast, to fail fast. Years ago, our chair of medicine came back to Maine Med and talked about this concept at Mayo, and you're thinking, okay, that's right. How do we do it? How do we just let ideas come forward, sift through the good ideas, and support them? And I think 2 years in, I want to just give a big plug for Susan and the team that you've put together. You've done phenomenal work creating the flexibility, creating the structure to allow our colleagues to bring their good ideas forward. So I would just say bravo. The path we're on right now, the ideas, Andy often talks about our vision, and it's working together is a key component of it. And Beth talked about it earlier as I joined. And that's another thing I was worried about early on. If we just try to solve problems ourselves, we won't broaden the ideas. We won't bring in the great ideas from the community. And so what you've demonstrated is that collaborative effort. To see our colleagues from USM here, Jeremy, it's great to see you here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your partnership. So I'll close there, Susan, but bravo to this team. I think the future's bright, and the idea is just keep them coming.
Thank you, Jeff, and Andy and Doug and all of our moderators, Chris, Jeremy, and Brandy, and of course, all of our passionate innovators, And I also want to again thank our innovation team, for their incredible hard work every day, but especially for putting this amazing celebration together. I couldn't work with more amazing folks. I also want to thank all of our collaborators and stakeholders and colleagues to make this work. So thank you for your support. It's wonderful to be able to celebrate after 2 years. So this concludes our program, and just want to thank everyone